Eye of Cthulhu is big, but is it though? You see, Terraria is a 2D game that shows all of its elements in a 2D space, zoomed out of your character, and this makes things seem very small. But that raises the question, how big really are things in Terraria? How big would they be in real life? Since we're talking about bosses, will they stand a chance against real life things like buildings, trees, and animals? And lastly, what do they look like in real life? Are they really intimidating for their size? I am jpallgraphic, and this is Illustrating Terraria Bosses, Part 2. So last episode, we found a way to measure the size of objects in Terraria. Using our trusty depth meter, we figured out that one block is 2 feet. And since each block is 8 pixels wide and 8 pixels tall, we divided 2 feet by 8, and that means 1 pixel is 3 inches. And we used those measurements to measure King Slime. Now for today's episode, we'll be measuring the size of the Eye of Cthulhu. Since we already have the measurements given and I don't want to bore you, let's move on to measuring the size of the Eye of Cthulhu. Now funnily enough, I already measured the size of the Eye of Cthulhu last episode. As you can see, its width is 4.11 meters or 13.5 feet, its length is 4.26 meters or 14 feet, and its tendrils are around 1.83 meters. That's taller than me. Those aren't the only things that are of interest. The length of this iris is actually quite surprising. It's around 25 pixels wide, or 6.25 feet, or 1.9 meters. To show you how big this really is, the average height of a human is 1.7 meters, or 5'7", and as you can see, it's more than 6 feet. And as you know, an eye is a circular object. So, here's the iris, here's the pupil. It's not only 6.25 feet in length, but also in height. So, a 6-footer would look like this. This, around this tall. But yeah, that goes to show how big this boss really is. And the size of the pupils are still impressive, measuring at around 1.37 meters or 4.5 feet. But that's not all. As you know, the Eye of Cthulhu has 2 faces. And for the second face, a part of its eye is gone, and what's revealed is a horrifying looking mouth with a bunch of teeth. Now, the width of this mouth is 33 pixels, or 8.25 feet, or 2.51 meters. Well, for the teeth, I'm measuring the longest one by the way, it's around 12 pixels, or 3 feet, or 0.9 meters. Now, you might be thinking, oh, that isn't that big. Well, this is 3 feet. This tooth, it's as long as your arm. Well, for the mouth, it's more than 6 or 7 feet, so this is wider than everyone's height. Well, maybe almost everyone. Now for the demon eyes, this isn't the right search. Well, for the demon eyes and servants of Cthulhu, the height of the demon eye is 2.75 feet or 0.83 meters, and its length is around 3 feet or 0.94 meters. Now there are demon eye variants, with those variants being larger than the original, but other than that, this is how big a typical demon eye would be. Well, for the servants of Cthulhu, this is honestly a lot bigger than I expected. Its height is 0.762 meters or 2.5 feet, and its length is 0.6858 meters or 2.25 feet. While for the tendrils, it's around 6 pixels or 0.46 meters or 1.5 feet. Same with the servants of Cthulhu. Now, as I mentioned earlier, none of these numbers would really make sense if we didn't have anything to compare it with, like real life things. Here I am in this website called heightcomparison.com, where I translated the measurements of the Eye of Cthulhu, the Demon Eye, and the Servant of Cthulhu, and compared their sizes with other things. One of those are the Terrarian's height and the 6-footer. And comparing them to the Demon Eyes and Servants of Cthulhu, you can see that these eyes are a lot bigger than what's expected. As for the Eye of Cthulhu, it is significantly bigger than the 6-footer and the Terrarium. It's also a bit bigger than a 1-story house, though not as wide. From that, we can conclude that the size of the Eye of Cthulhu looks less like this, and more like this. I don't think I would like to see that in real life. And for the giraffe, If we just focus on the eye part of the Eye of Cthulhu, you can see that it's a bit smaller than a giraffe, but it probably has a lot more area and is wider than the giraffe's body. I mean, if we include the tendrils, then the Eye of Cthulhu is obviously taller than the giraffe. Once we get to larger objects like architecture and trees, the Eye of Cthulhu is obviously a lot smaller. It's smaller than a 2-story house, it's a bit smaller than the dogwood tree, although if we include the tendrils then it will probably be taller. But dogwood trees can be taller than 17 feet, so... And if we compare it to the average size of an oak tree, you can see that the Eye of Cthulhu is just... its size isn't impressive anymore, is it? And it pales in comparison to the Statue of Liberty. Look at how massive this building is. It really puts things into perspective, how small you really are and how massive or tall something is. Like even the Eye of Cthulhu, it's just, it doesn't compare with the Statue of Liberty's height. Now maybe adding this is quite unnecessary, considering this building is obviously way too big compared to the Eye of Cthulhu. But even though it isn't as impressive when seen at this scale, what if we see it through the lens of the player? Us. Eye of Cthulhu may seem like a small boss when seen in Terraria, but if we look at it from a first-person view, its size would be way more emphasized. This artwork is meant to emphasize how big this boss really is. Even this sketch doesn't show the accurate size of the Eye of Cthulhu. Yet, it's way bigger than this. There's also the servants of Cthulhu, which aren't also the correct sizes. Like any normal artwork, I start with sketching, doing some composition work, and outlining the focus points of my artwork, which is the character, the armor, muscle armor. Then I illustrated the sky, and started to form the eyes. The sclera, tendrils, blood vessels, which I also incorporated to the rest of the eyeballs, then the iris and pupil. This time I made sure that the sizes of them are accurate to what has been measured. I also illustrated the character, and this time I remember that since it's wearing fossil armor, the weapon in use should be ranged. Considering I haven't really done much practicing for posing and proportions, does this character have a decent pose and form? Also, I really want to comment about this because it's quite funny. These Spectre boots, man, they're literally acting like rocket thrusters. Like what? Like how much energy is stored within these boots? Anyway, then after adding all the necessary elements, you could see that the Eye of Cthulhu's size is quite significant. Even the iris is larger than the height of the player's body. Now, it's time for the rest of the details, lighting, and refinements. And since this series is focusing on measuring boss sizes and not art, I'll make this a time-lapse for you to enjoy so that you could see the entire artwork come to shape. Ready? Hit it! If you want to see me measure and illustrate boss sizes, click this video over here. And if you want to see me illustrate Terraria biomes, like the Crimson, click this video over here.